board. So just to let you know that the meeting is being recorded and it's live, and it will be available for subsequent broadcast on the council's internet site. And I'll just go around and have the council introduce themselves first, and I'll go to the officers who are here too. So I'll start with Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, Councillor Carroll, Top Health.
Councillor Blake.
Councillor Barbara Blake, Seven Sisters.
Councillor Mitchell.
Councillor Peter Mitchell, Woodside.
And I'll go with the officers in the room. Fiona.
Fiona Alderman, I'm a council's monitoring officer.
Aisha.
Aisha Simset, Democratic Services and Scrutiny Manager.
Okay. And I think perhaps there are people in there as well. So those that are joined by Teams. Oh, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Stephen Lawrence, I'm the Deputy Monitoring Officer Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. And is that Raymond?
Yeah, hi Chair, thank you. Raymond Prince, also Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us remotely. And do we have any apologies for absence?
Chair, we've not received any apologies for absence.
I'll move on to item 3, which is items of urgent business.
There's no items of new urgent business, but we do have items that were submitted. Item number 7, members allowance scheme, and also item number 8, which is the Lga Code of conduct. But as there was time needed to update the reports.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 4, which is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Then we're on to item 5, which is the minutes of the last meeting that was held on 25th of January. Before we look at matters arising, can I please ask if, just for accuracy purposes, if people are happy with the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting? And then are there any items, just any matters arising from the minutes? No. Thank you. So then I will now move on to item 6, which is the register of interests. Disposable pecuniary interest in land. And that's on pages 7 to 10 of the papers. So I know that we did discuss this back in, I think it's October now when we had our last meeting. And I think things have changed. So I just thought it would be useful just to recap and see whether there have been any changes in legislation or where the council stands on members not having their addresses visible on the internet. They may still keep the addresses for the council to know that it's there and people can request it, but just that it's not available on the internet.
So, yeah, just to follow up here, we've heard that there's not been any changes in legislation. I think following the meeting previously, there were some further submissions put forward to the monitoring itself. In terms of withholding addresses with a sensitive interest. So there was a further request put forward, and we've kind of we've also sent around some just concerns expressed about personal safety. There's been some training links provided to the LGA just on personal safety of councillors. So that's been sent around to the councillors as well. And we've got some slides from that training session as well that we've circulated to all councillors. And we're looking to take that forward again in so just following up on the kind of personal safety element arising from the earlier discussions.
Okay. So I know that there were, well, I know that when the MP was moving, I know that there was some discussion initially to relook at that, but I guess because there are other things that have taken shape after, that's what it's a back burner now. You know, just look at it nationally. I think there was a lot of interest nationally into it, but I think it's gotten quiet now because of other items that have. Yeah, I won't say which ones, but the other items that have taken our Parliament's attention from this. But
the LGA have run more courses on it, and but there isn't a kind of there isn't a kind of anything legislative or anything to do with kind of withholding addresses or kind of where surgeries are held, kind of promoting online or anything like that. That doesn't seem to have kind of been an action arising. It seems to be more the focus on ensuring counsellors have got the information and tools they need to be as safe as possible. It seems, but I'm not sure if there's any further updates nationally, but we can check on that. But as far as I've seen, there isn't. Yeah.
So basically, for the upcoming local elections, then candidates that are on the ballot papers, their addresses will not be seen. So that law came in place.
Yeah.
But then once they do become councillors, then they'll have to disclose their addresses. But then those that do have some concerns can still come to yourself, Fiona, and we can look at that. Do we have any other Councillor?
Just a query, so if the monitoring officer has agreed that a home address need not be displayed, nonetheless, is there an obligation on the member to notify the monitoring officer if their home address changes?
Yes. We would still keep a separate file in terms of that, although the address is not shown on the website, we still keep kind of our registry of interest with their address on it, because that's still, they should be still declaring discreetly if they're in a meeting or something where their address is maybe, or they've got an interest in that, they should still be declaring that. So it's just that it's withheld from the kind of public website, but we would still have a document of their address.
So when filling out the form, then do you put in your address and then you remove it once you receive at your end?
Yeah, so once the monitoring officers agreed that the address, it can be withheld under the relevant section in the Localism Act, what we would do is we would put on the actual published version of the registry of interest on the withheld under section 3.2 of the Localism Act, but then internally on our file we would still keep the file of the ROI with the address kind of included.
Any other questions or comments on this? No. Okay, so we can leave it for now, and let us please do keep us updated if there are any changes to the legislation. Thank you for this. Then we will now move on to item 7, which is the members' allowance scheme, and that went out with the second dispatch, so it's the second batch of papers.
Yeah, this is not very much different from the earlier report we received in January. So it's just there was kind of a bit of comment about there's still ongoing negotiations with local government officers in terms of a 1.75 increase, and that's not been resolved as yet. I think it's unlikely to be resolved until April. But again, it's just gauging from yourselves further to your kind of discussions with your colleagues whether you're wanting to keep the allowance scheme as it is, or whether you're wanting to take forward index linking just the basic allowance to by 1.75% of the increases with the local government officer pay increase. So we will need that recommendation from this committee to go up to full council for the 14th of March meeting. So it's getting a sense of your discussions that you've had with your colleagues and what we want to recommend up to the council.
All right, thank you for that. So I'll open this item up for discussion then. I'm not sure if anybody has any thoughts, so if they want me to lead with my thoughts on this. Okay, but quiet, so I'll lead with my thoughts on this. So I know we discussed this the last time, and I think the feeling is that it could be a 1.75% increase to the current government pay itself. But I think in just the current climate, as it stands right now, we're just coming out of the pandemic. The cost of living is going up as is with all the different energy prices going up. So for me, I think just for this year, I think I'll be inclined to just leave it as it is right now and don't make any changes to it. This can be reviewed next year, and next year we can always go with what the committee had agreed on, the independent review, where we could always index link it another time. Those are my thoughts at the moment. I don't know what anybody else feels.
I'm happy to go along with that. I mean, 1.75% on basic allowances, if we were to do that, I mean, it's a very modest increase, so forfeiting that is not going to make a difference really in terms of incentives to become a councillor, isn't it?
Councillor, do you have any thoughts on this?
Don't know. I mean, it's quite a modest increase. Yeah, I think I'm happy to go along with what you're saying.
Yeah. Councillor, what are your thoughts on this?
But is that along the lines of what we discussed last time?
Well, last time we didn't come up with an agreement, but the last time, I think we 1.75% was a major increase. But I think, upon reflection to myself, I think that if we don't award ourselves the increase this year, but we can look at that next year. Just because I explained just how everything is going up for the
Yeah,
you know.
I've got no objection to that.
Okay, so we're in agreement to just keep the members' allowance scheme as it is right now and recommend that to full council.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. The next item is item 8, which is the Local Government Association Model Councillor Code of Conduct. And that's on pages 29 to 152 of the second dispatch papers. So is that really good?
That would be Stephen.
Oh, sorry, Stephen. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, you recall that as part of the updates which we provide to the committee, we did some time ago inform the committee of the new LGA Local Government Association Model Code, and also of the supporting guidance. And the committee then suggested that a further report be brought back on this item. Chair, the report before you is in essence it is a discussion paper on the model code and the supporting guidance. What to bear in mind is that in 2019, the Committee of Standards in Public Life published the Local Government Ethical Standards Report, and one of the key recommendations arising from the report is the need for the Local Government Association to create an updated model code of conduct. So this LGA model code and the guidance note is in response to that recommendation. And Chair, for this meeting, you're being asked to consider and comment on the code and the supporting guidance, and also to make comparison with the council's current members' code of conduct. The LGO code and supporting guidance in Appendix 1 and 2 of your pack, and the council's current code is in Appendix 3. I think what is important for the committee to also note is that the intention is to actually have similar discussions with the political groups and the group leaders, and also the statutory officers, and also the independent persons, and providing advisory role to the committee. Chair, what I've done in the report is that is set out in paragraph 5.3 some of the key points to note about the LGA code. First is that there will be an annual review conducted by the LGA. The purpose of the annual review is to actually ensure that there's an ongoing monitoring and review of the code to make sure it remains fit for purpose and takes into account any updates, including any changes in legislation. Chair, if you look at the Lga Code itself, you find that there is a paragraph which has a subhead in the purpose of the code. Again, that is a positive statement, and it sets out the context in which the code has been presented, and the statement in that paragraph should resonate well with members. Another key feature of the code is the fact that the code is written in the first person. So, for example, you have phrases like "I" and "treat other councillors and members of the public with respect." Again, this conveys a sense of personal responsibility on the part of councillors. The code also has a section on the standards of conduct or general conduct. Again, this is written in a way that is quite easy for councillors and other stakeholders to understand. The code also, the Lga Code also has a number of explanatory text. Again, this facilitates a better understanding of the obligations, not just for councillors under the code, but also for members of the public. Now, what is also quite interesting about the Lga Code, Chair, is the fact that the general conduct, these are the general obligations part of the code, covers almost all of the council's almost all of the council's current general obligations part of its code. There's certain matters it doesn't cover. For example, obligations to have due regard to the advice of the monitoring officer and the chief finance officers, and also the obligations to give reasons for decisions and not to make trivial or malicious allegations. Chair, as I indicated earlier, the code is supported by guidance. Again, such guidance are quite useful for councillors and for members of the public, and to better understand the nature and extent of the obligations, and also has very useful case examples. And Chair, in the report, what I've done is that I've done there's a table. There's table 1 is on page 3 and goes on to page 4. There's some of the key contents of the Lga codes and the key headings, and alongside it is there's the council's current code. You find that there are significant commonality between both, and the main difference is the fact that the Lga Code has more narrative to support it. Again, what one needs to bear in mind is that the council's current code was prepared, I think, is based on the old national code, although it has been updated and since when it was initially, I think it was prepared in about 2007, if not, it passed a bit subsequently after that. But it's been updated. It's been updated from time to time. But the Lga Code is very much a modern version, so one would expect to actually have more up-to-date narrative and more case examples. So if you look at the table comparison, you find that the Lga Code, for example, has there's a paragraph for the joint statement, sets out the purpose of the code, the general principles. Again, that's a common feature between the council's code and the Lga Code. The application of the code, again, that's quite common between both. And then you move on to the general conduct, and in the council's code is referred to as general obligations. Again, you see a lot of commonality between both, which actually assists in terms of telling you what is in the Lga Code and what is not in the council's code, and what's in the council's code and what's not in the Lga Code. Also, there's a section on registration of interest, also similar to the council's code. So that is table 1. And if you move on to paragraph 5.4, I've basically in that paragraph set out just a brief a brief overview of the council's code. As I indicated earlier, the code is based on the 2007 National Code of Conduct, and I think when there have been subsequent changes, and as a result of which the national code ceased to apply. But what then happened is that most authorities choose to adopt the national code, and making some minor changes. And also the national code, which has been adopted by most authorities, has subsequently been amended to take into account the provisions of the Localism Act, in particular provisions relating to disclosable pecuniary interest. And also subsequently with our current code as well, there have been changes to take into account the recommendations of the Committee of Standards in Public Life, recommendation relating to bullying and harassment. Otherwise, there hasn't been any significant changes made in respect of the language and presentation of our current code of conduct. So the recent review and the work undertaken by the LGA is quite useful because it gives the council an opportunity to actually review its current code and to consider whether or not it needs updating. And Chair, what I've also done in paragraph 5.5 is to actually give much more of a narrative, a slightly detailed narrative comparison between some of the key aspects of the council's code and the LGA code. So, for example, if you look at the general obligations relating to respect, in the council's code, what you have in the council code is set out the members' obligation to actually respect, members' obligation respect in the context of respect. But what the LGA code does is actually go beyond that to actually give a bit more explanation, a bit more context, which actually enables the reader to actually understand the nature and obligation of the code. Again, there's similar trade across most of the obligations in respect of, say, for example, in respect of confidentiality and access to information. Again, so sorry, if we go on to the paragraph relating to the confidential and access to the information, there the obligation is stated in no further explanatory text. Same with the council's code. However, there is a new obligation and that deals with improperly using knowledge gained as a result of being a councillor for the self-advancement knowledge gained as a result of being a councillor for self-advancement or of their friends, family members, employer, and their business interests. So that's an additional obligation which is actually in the LGA code, but currently not in the council's code. Well, you find that if you go through some of those headings, examples I've given there, in respect of use of position to improperly confer an advantage, disrepute, use of local authority resources, both codes actually basically set out the requirement. But what the LGA code does is to actually provide a bit more explanatory text to the obligation, and which hopefully aids better understanding. In terms of the registration of interest and declaration of interest, what the code does is to actually it covers the obligation in respect of interest, and I've said in paragraph 5.6 that it covers it in the following order: registration of disclosable pecuniary interest, non-participation in the case of disclosable pecuniary interest, disclosure of other registrable interest, disclosure of non-registrable interest, and gifts and hospitality. In respect of gifts and hospitality, there is an obligation in the Model Code not to accept gifts or hospitality irrespective of estimated value, which could give rise to a real or substantial personal gain or a reasonable suspicion of influence, and an obligation to register gift or hospitality with an estimated value of at least £50. In contrast with the council's code, again, it covers the obligation on interest, but in this following order: members' interest and disclosable pecuniary interest, personal interest and prejudicial interest, registration of members' interest, including notification and registration of interest, registration of gifts and hospitality, and also sensitive interest. In respect of disclosure of members' interest, and also it covers disclosure of members' interest and effect upon participation in meetings, also disclosure of interest and effect of DPIs, that is pecuniary interest or prejudicial interest on participation in meetings. So in respect of gifts and hospitality, the Council's Code only provides for the registration of gifts and hospitality with an estimated value of at least £25. You find that on interest, the language used by the Model Code and the Council's Code differs slightly, although the outcome are very similar in the context of registering any disclosable pecuniary interest and other interest as well. But the language and the approach differs, and I have to say, in terms of my one's personal preference, I think the council's model code, sorry, the council's code actually deals with the issues on interest and registration of interest far better than the model code. But I've also suggested that there might be aspects of the council's code there might be aspects of the council's code that should be reviewed. For example, the part relating to acceptance of gifts and hospitality. The Lga Code clearly provides that councillors should not accept any gifts and hospitality. The Council's Code then provides that the councillors should register gifts and hospitality to the value of £25. Again, we suggest that it implies that councillors can actually accept gifts and hospitality. So there might be that particular paragraph may be worth looking at in respect of the Council's Code. Chair, what the committee may be considering as part of looking at this is the pros and cons of the Council's Code and the Lga Code. What I've done in paragraph 5.9 to 5.15 actually lays out some of the pros and cons. But what members need to bear in mind is that there is no obligation, there's no requirement at all to actually adopt the Lga Model Code, either in its entirety or at all. But as I indicated earlier, the Lga Code is helpful in terms of presenting a more up-to-date version of the council's the members' code of conduct. Also, one helpful part of the Lga Code, as I indicated earlier, is that it's going to be reviewed on an annual basis. And so, if, for example, the decision is made to adopt all or part of the Lga Code, it means that any review undertaken by the Lga would actually assist us in terms of updating the model code. Chair, what also I need to draw to your attention is that not all local authorities have adopted the model code. I know that there are some authorities out there that have adopted it, but not all authorities have adopted it. But it is fair to say that it's one of those topic in the agendas of most standards committee to actually take a view on the code. Again, the point to bear in mind also is that there is no, again, members may take the view that there are other priorities that the committee has in mind, and that there is no pressing need to actually adopt the code. And also members must also take into account the additional resource required in actually changing and rolling out any changes to the code. Chair, I think that is all I have to say for now. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you much for that. I think it's very thorough what you've done, and I like what you put in the tables, how you compared the different ones, make it an easy glance for that. Do you know how many counts local authorities have not taken up the LGA's recommended one? I mean, if you don't know, we can always find out later on.
Yeah, Chair, I think that's something which I'm happy to look into. I can contact the LGA on that to see how many authorities have actually adopted the code.
Yeah, and also be interested if it's not too much additional work, just to find out those that haven't done it. Was the reason for not adopting because theirs was very similar, or was it this that they just due to lack of resources, they didn't feel it was appropriate to adopt it at this stage? And that might be quite useful as well. I think the only other comment that I have is just the registering the gifts. I know that the figure £25 is not that the council changed. It must have been in the last administration. I think they wanted it to have more transparency, so they reduced the amount that I'm not sure the original amount was, but I think they reduced it to £25 because they wanted councils to actually declare more of the gifts if they receive any gifts. I'll open up to other councils if anybody else has any other comments they want to raise at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the guidance on the LGA code had some useful examples. I was thinking in particular of, we've got elections coming up, so there'll be quite a number of new councillors. Some of those might be helpful in terms of training sessions that the council puts on. On the other hand, the guidance itself, seems to me, is far too long to be dumping that on a new member, but I thought some of the examples were useful. I wasn't sure why some of the paragraphs are in yellow. I wasn't clear about the significance of those in the guidance. There was a couple of things I was surprised at. Just find on so I'm looking at the pack as a whole. So what's on page 62 is part of the guidance. It's about confidentiality and access to information. And it says, as a councillor, I do not disclose information, etc. And then it says, unless, and one of the exceptions is if a disclosure is made to a third party for the purpose of obtaining professional legal advice. So I was a bit puzzled by that so a councillor can take something that's provided in confidence, to get their own legal advice. Is that what it's saying? Because obviously we would normally get legal advice from our own officers. So I just clarify that. And then on page 108, the table that starts. Is it just the way it's typed up? I didn't really understand the initial columns. Got some very strange headings.
Oh, okay. So
Type and speak and votes. Yeah. And so, if I read it correctly, so the first one, is it saying disclosure of pecuniary interest? Is that saying if you have declared an interest, then you can't speak, you can't vote, and you can't stay at the end of it? Is that right? It's just the way it's formulated on the page, but I'm guessing that's what it's about. Although some of the subsequent abbreviations, I wasn't too sure what those were. Perhaps they could be clarified. But I think it would, in more general terms, I think it perhaps would be useful to have a more detailed, a consideration of where the differences have been highlighted between the LGA model code and the current council's code as to whether changes would be helpful with the council's code or some examples given. That would be my comments.
Yeah, I agree. The examples are quite good. It's quite useful to see actually real life examples for the various scenarios. I'm not sure, Stephen, whether you want.
Chair, if I may comment on that, the yellow highlights, I think those were rogue highlights on my part as part of my reading. So my apologies for that, Chair. I think I highlighted those parts, and I think that was the bit that was actually eventually and copied and attached to your report. So my apologies for that. I noticed that you wanted a bit more clarity on page 62. Now, what to bear in mind is this: is that the way the LGA model code deals with and declaration of interest and participation in meeting is slightly different from the way the council's model code from the way the council's code of conduct deals with it. We use in terms of the language, we have disclosable pecuniary interest, which is often called DPIs, and then we have personal interest, and we have prejudicial interest, and then the outcome of that determination on the type of interest determine whether or not you can actually participate in, or participate in the meeting. In the LGA code, model code, it talks about pecuniary interest and other sort of other registrable interest. And I found that trying to make a comparative analysis between both was quite difficult. But the outcome in terms of what both are trying to achieve, which is to make sure that if you haven't got a DPI, but you actually have other interest, you need to disclose it, and as a consequence, you may need to decide not to actually participate in the meeting. But I find that for comparative analysis purposes, it was very, very difficult, Chair. Just to make that point. And on paragraph on page 108, again, sorry, that is. What has happened is that when the appendix was being copied and pasted, I think an error may have occurred as a consequence. So I think what I can do is to actually send the committee another version of the guidance with the narrative clearly set out, with narrative clearly set out, so that it's easier for the committee to actually pick on the key text in there.
Thank you. And just if you can just go back to maybe I missed it, but page 62 on the 4.1 bullet point 3, where it does ask for legal advice. You may seek a third-party legal advice.
So I'm just going to page 62 now. Yes.
4.1b, and it's the third bullet point. That's what Councilor Mitchell was just querying that.
I didn't disclose it. Sorry, I'm just going through it, Chair. So, sorry, can I just ask for which the paragraph of concern again? Sorry.
So it's the one in my version. It's heading page 62. And there's a heading: confidentiality and access to information. And it's, as a councillor, 4.1, I do not disclose information. And then it gives some examples. And in B, it says that information that I've obtained that's of a confidential nature, unless, and then the third bullet point, unless that disclosure is made to a third party for the purpose of obtaining professional legal advice, provided that the third party agrees not to disclose the information to any other person. I was slightly puzzled by that, thinking, if as a member I've got confidential information, I can't think of the circumstances when I might want to get legal advice myself. If I wanted to ask a question about the legality of information I've been given, I'd go to yourselves, the legal officers.
Well, if it's about legal advice, you also someone may be taking legal action against you, and you would need, yes, and you are taking legal advice relating to that matter, and you're taking legal advice, then naturally you would have to divulge that as part of what you divulge to your solicitor. I assume that's what it's referring to.
Yeah. So just to explain, I think in the first instance, you're correct. If there are queries raised in the context of information which has been passed to you in confidence, and which perhaps there's a query about disclosure, you should in the first instance contact the monitoring officer for advice, or the monitoring officer's absent, the deputy monitoring officer. But there might be situations, for example, whereby perhaps there's an issue about the obligation itself to disclose, and whereby you may want to take advice on the issue itself. And if you actually want to take your own independent advice, then you may find that you may be required to actually, again, disclose it to, say, a solicitor, for example, to take advice on the nature and extent of the obligation you're under. But I agree with you in the first instance, you need to actually consult the monitoring officer on it.
Any other comments or no?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Page 71. I think so. Obviously, our code, I think, is quite thin. Is the question, do we want to adopt the LGA code as our code? Is that the main question?
It could be adopted or take parts of it.
Yeah.
And incorporate it into our code.
Yeah. Well, on that, just a general comment, like I think the more description in the code, probably the better. Just to kind of try and tie it down and stop people finding the loophole in defending themselves, I suppose. Quite a lot of this is all about like interest and stuff like that, which is fair enough because obviously that's a major thing. I'm more interested in bits of the code that aren't that, because that's like it's obvious. Whereas the other stuff is kind of in the balance. I'm interested in the examples on page 71. I don't want to read it out, but you know, so a councillor posted a tweet about another councillor, it seems like, you know, saying that failed leadership, I hope SFO is brought in to investigate your conduct, throw in the towel, all that kind of thing. The complainant stated that she found the tweet very offensive, fair enough, okay. The councillor found to have brought his authority into disrepute. I was very surprised to have read that actually. I don't see how the code is engaged at all by that tweet. And bearing in mind some of the things that have been and gone through this assessments and standards committee, and nothing, you know, no conclusion of engaging the code. I found that quite strange. I don't know if anyone, I just throw that out as a discussion point with members and officers. I thought that was quite harsh. I mean, it's a comment, isn't it? It's a. Does it really bring the council into disrepute by reducing public confidence in the council? Just appears to be a councillor slagging off another councillor between them, isn't it? I don't know. I thought that was a bit harsh.
That one.
What do we think?
I think I have to say I haven't paid a lot of. There's so many case examples here. It's difficult to actually focus on a particular one. I know with some of the case examples, they might be based on real cases, but duly anonymized. And I think one of the takeaways I have from this discussion is that perhaps with some of the case examples, there needs to be a bit more depth to it. And that, and also the fact that there might be councillors who may actually take issue with the outcomes arising from, say, the particular case. So I think that is something I take from this. And perhaps when I have a discussion with the LGA, if I do actually have a discussion with the LGA on this, it might be something which is worth raising.
Yeah, no, interesting stuff. I was just surprised to have read that. The second example, of course, is a very famous one. It's local authority, but I'll leave that there.
Any other comments, suggestions? So I just think for myself, just looking at the time billable, because obviously we're going towards the election period. I'm assuming that this would have to come back to the committee for us to approve it and then recommend it to be adopted. Is that correct?
I think the pathway forward is that you, at least you're giving your comments about the Lga code now, which no doubt we're taking on board. Then we are going now to the groups and the group leaders and also to other statutory officers for their comments as well. And then afterwards, we then need to actually collate all the comments, then come back to this committee for view in terms of how you actually want to progress with this. So yes, there's going to be a report coming back to this committee at some point in time.
Okay, so basically, for this financial year, we don't have any more meetings. So that means it will come back to this committee until after June.
Indeed.
So that means for the new intake of councillors, they will be basically adopting the existing councillor code of conduct, because there's not enough time for having all those kind of discussions with groups. I think examples are definitely useful. Just to give people examples of the different scenarios, and just to help them better understand what's bringing the council to disappear like this. And I think that's very useful. I think there were some items in the tables that you did provide that the LG, that our local authority did have and the LG didn't have. Without having looked at the code of conduct in more detail, I think some of those items, I don't see why we shouldn't still include them. But again, I think it might be useful just to see for yourselves. I know you're saying that if we were to adopt the LGA's one, then it's going to help any kind of future updates. It's much easier to do. But it might be just taking a hybrid, taking some key points from theirs and just incorporating it into ours. And then it is an annual review that's being done, because the LGA will keep on providing annual updates. Then it's a matter of just having those key tables and saying what's new, and then whether they wanted to add those in there as well. I think that's all that I have to say at the moment. And it is, I think our one is not, it's definitely not this many pages. Our council code of conduct. And yeah.
So just, I think the council's code is basically, it's just what we call the bare minimum. It says it's simple and it's straight to the point. And the LGA code, on the other hand, actually has more explanation, more narrative to support it. And also I think you've got two packs there. One is the actual code, and the other is the supporting guidance. So you find that if, for example, a decision is made to actually adopt the code, for example, the LGA code, it's actually the appendix 1 that's the key document, and the appendix 2 is just the supporting guidance.
Okay. Okay, so the next stage is to take it to political groups. Is that what you're saying? And then to the leader as well.
Indeed.
Okay.
And then then hopefully coming back to the committee under the new administration.
Okay, so I guess if we haven't got any further comments to make, then I'm happy for you to just take it forward for discussions with the other groups as well, and then just bring back the updates once you have it to us and what you suggest as well. And it'll be good just from yourselves as well, what your thoughts are. Do you think having a mixture of the LGA one and the council one? I don't know what your thoughts are. Or am I putting you on the spot?
No, I think there is yeah, I think the suggestion of a hybrid is a good one. It's one that we as officers need to look at. I think that there are some good takeaways from the LGA code, which perhaps we as a council should consider adopting. And so definitely there are some useful nuggets in there which would actually assist with the council actually updating this current code.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So thank you for the update and bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
So then I'll now move on to item 9, which is the committee work program. And that's on pages 11 to 12.
Yeah, so it's I just need to add on, so we've got there'll be kind of updates. I think there's as a service, we're looking around to see what parts of just of the constitution that don't currently work, to find out which areas just need to be tweaked or changed. That's something that will come forward, I think, as an early report in June, and then got this follow-up report, I think, on the Lga Code of Conduct, it's indicated by Stephen, and then I think if the annual update on complaints as well, we can add that one to the June meeting.
And can I just check realistically, bringing the Lga Code of Conduct to June, is that realistic timelines, or do you think it might be
We might need a bit more time on that.
Well, we'll see how, Stephen seems to be very good, so he might surprise us. But we'll see how that one goes. Are there any items that anybody else thinks that they want to add to a future committee work program? Maybe not. Okay, so we'll see what happens in June, and then we can always add additional items. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. And we're now on to item 10, which is new items of urgent business. So we didn't have any of those on there. And then item 11 is the dates of future meetings. So the next meeting is the 28th of June. Then we're down to item 12, which is exclusion of the press and public. Before I move on to that one, I wanted to just say, because this is our last committee meeting for this year. I just want to say thank you very much for the members of the committee. Thank you for the officers for all the hard work that they've done. Working hybrid, we did hybrid working and just working throughout the pandemic and getting these papers done for us. So thank you so much for all the hard work you put in. And I'll just continue reading item 12. So it's items 13 to 15 are likely subject to a motion of excluding the press and public from the meeting as they contain exempt information as defined in section 100A of the Local Government Act of 1972, as amended by section 12A of the Local Government Act 1985, paragraphs 1 and 2, namely information relating to an individual and information likely to reveal the identity of an individual. So I'd like to ask whether members here present are happy for us to exclude the press and public from this part of the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, agreed. Thank you.